Thank you very much, Rob. I'm Jim Krumberger. I work out of the Raleigh area. I live in Durham, so it's a pleasure to be here. I have two colleagues with me. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Pat Murray, Regional Sales Manager for Netskope. I'm based out of Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yeah, I don't know if I need this. David Ray, I'm a peer RSM here in the Raleigh area. Been in IT, cybersecurity, and a number of different areas for, going on 35 plus years. So interested to talk to you today, and really excited to share what Jim's going to go through.
Yeah, and Netscope, if you're not familiar, we are basically the convergence, right? Like you're seeing it everywhere between networking and security. Applications data have basically left the data center and really transitioned into SaaS applications. And there's problems and inherent blind spots when that happens. Starting off a little light, just think about all of the transactions, right, that are happening in this slide. Between the cars, the people, their cell phones, that guy working in the office way up there in the top, right? It's not unlike what happens inside of one of your environments, right? From an IT standpoint, right? You have users like myself. If I look at just me today, I worked out of my home office with my corporate laptop and cell phone accessing both Gmail and OneDrive and Microsoft Suite. Coming from a laptop and a cell phone, right? And these events and transactions exponentially grow, right? And are compounded on top of one another. And it can be really hard for companies to understand like what's actually happening inside of their environment. I did the math once, and it's a pretty big number, right? Between all of the events that I do in a working session every single day, right? There's millions, and I'm just one individual person. If you think about the embedded AI that I'm also interacting with that I don't even know about, that companies might not even know about, that it's hidden inside of your applications. It's a it can be a super scary number, and depending on what's happening, it can be also very scary for your company, right? If data is potentially leaking out, whether it's from a disgruntled employee or an employee just accidentally sharing a file to a personal instance, or an individual taking a file with them as they transition to a new role. Did anybody notice something that's really scary in this? That guy right there? Not one? Anyone? Normally there's not. It's a guy on a motorcycle going the wrong way, right? And I don't have the greatest eyes, but I'm pretty sure he's not wearing a helmet. So that's what we're fighting against, right? In the world we're living in today. There's so much data, and all of it is really not inside of our environments anymore like it traditionally was. It kind of leads us to our initial talk track here, right? Is networking and security have really lost visibility. It goes primarily because the workforce has left the office. Cloud threats are increasing all over the place. Hackers, people with bad intentions, are hiding malware in the same applications that companies trust, right? It can be a really easy thing, and it can be a really complicated thing to safeguard against, all while utilizing GCP, AWS, Azure networking as their new backbone for some of these like newer companies, right? Without really having a heavy infrastructure on-prem. All of that wrapped around companies utilizing, on average, what we see is around 76 just security tools, right? Not overall tools, just tools that organizations are using to safeguard their data, their users, and get visibility back, right? Because again, you no longer have this huge castle and an inbound, outbound gateway, and the only thing you're really doing is blocking or allowing people going to a certain website, right? Like those days are long gone, and we're living in a completely new world. Again, this is just the kind of the pre-world, like kind of how I explained it, right? All of your applications resided on-prem, and when you did have a remote worker, they had a VPN. And as soon as they were on the network, they're good to go. They can work. In the post-world that we're living in that post-cloud environment world, how many instances of OneDrive are there, or Google Drive? I mean, hundreds of millions? I don't even know the number, right? It's astronomical. But we all, every single one of us, probably have a Google account, probably have a Microsoft account to be safe, or your organizations utilize them as a mail carrier. But a lot of times we all go to the same domain to get to that application, right? And again, you can't just have an allow or a block because data is sitting everywhere, right? If we look at the modern trend that we're seeing, you really need to have end-to-end context, right, of data, well, what it is, where it is, who it is, and how is it being accessed. There's a tremendous amount of data that is completely unstructured, that is sitting still potentially on-prem or in some kind of AWS S3 bucket, right? That's completely unstructured. And that's probably okay for a lot of organizations, right? Because you probably have, I don't even know, like thousands of terabytes of data or more, right? But it is, and it can be scary when that data moves, right? And that's really where you're going to have guardrails around it. This gets even more complicated when we transition and we start talking about Gen AI and agentic AI and the AI bots that companies are now experimenting with, right? A whole new set of challenges that we'll talk about here in a second. But the dilemma really has been that web, cloud, SaaS, email, endpoint, all of these separated tools all try to categorize data by themselves. And then they all try to protect that data. And then basically the overall aspect is that your data itself, right, the governing data has to be monitored and remediated through, allow, block, alert, or quarantine. But again, going back to the problem, right, as teams using, one or many solutions for each one of these categories to help, implement security. Because the new landscape, and this data is just a little dated, but the new landscape that we're seeing in the world today is that cloud applications truly are the battlefield. This is, again, from 2024. We should probably update it this year, but hackers know that organizations have adopted widely Microsoft suite, the Google suite of applications. And that's exactly where individuals have bad intentions are hiding executables, right? If it kind of looks like a legitimate email, it's from OneDrive or a link to some kind of suite that a company has adopted, it's probably pretty likely that your users are going to click on it, right? If it looks legitimate, they're going to click on it before they realize that they probably just downloaded a malicious file share without even knowing it, right? And they're compromised. This complicates itself because a lot of traditional securities tooling, it's really hard to inspect Microsoft traffic. It's super thick and heavy, right? It's a bear. Even Microsoft tells you not to do it. And a lot of security tools, us not included in this mindset, but a lot of them will tell you not to do it. But to be a partner with Microsoft, they have to have like a little click like on and off, like inspect traffic, don't inspect traffic. And a lot of companies will tell you not to inspect it and to rely on the same companies that are, breaching you to do the security for it. So it's a major issue, and it's going to continue to grow as people still rely on the same applications that that's attacking them with the malware via whether it's Microsoft in this example to actually facilitate the security. The same thing is true when we're looking at individuals uploading to personal instances. Google, I remember, is a good example of that. There was a deficiency that allowed attackers through that specific workspace data without a trace. So it exfiltrates data inside of that workspace, and they didn't even know it happened, right? And a lot of that, again, stems to the fact that companies are trusting Google, Microsoft, and those types of companies to do the inspection and enforcement of their security policies, right, and enforcement, but they don't actually have the ability to natively. This slide works a lot better if you think about all of these buckets actually ebbing and flowing. Like identity, right, can change over time with a user as a company. Same thing with a user being on a trusted device and or untrusted device. Like my example earlier, whether they're working from this office, their home office, or they're coming from a trusted app like Microsoft, for example. Those first four things are pretty easy to do for a lot of security tooling that is out there. But it's still, like what we found is that 74% of data still goes to personal instances of a cloud sharing application, whether it's OneDrive, Dropbox, whatever the company has adopted, right, as their file sharing service, they can still be exfiltrated via that method just because it's a huge blind spot, right? Because, again, it's an application that they don't really control or own. The next four is really where the rubber meets the road. Again, how many instances of G Drive are there? Being able to give a unique identifier to those and to treat them differently is super important. And then being able to actually control what activities people are doing inside of those applications, right? Should an intern be able to download a file that says that's intellectual property labeled, right, or has a certain type of labeling? Probably not. Should the C-suite? It's potentially possible that they should. Context is key, and every single one of these individual aspects gives additional context to what a user is trying to do, and that context can change over time. From a user, and the behavior that they're doing being one that is benefiting the company, or very different if it's trying to detract from the company, right? Like stealing information. So based on what users actually do day to day, a company like Netskope and Netskope can understand like what a behavior pattern looks like for an individual. And when that behavior pattern changes, we can then apply different rules that they're allowed to do, right? So we have companies that utilize us for, they call it a flight risk, but potentially an individual that's looking to leave the company. That can be measured by a lot of different things, how much data they're interacting with, what data they're downloading, and kind of what, where they're going on the open internet. That then allows us to change the policies, right? Maybe we limit what they're actually able to download, right? From OneDrive as the example, right? Again, to help safeguard the company from data being taken, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. The end, and DLP is really a four-letter word. Unfortunately, it can be really difficult for some companies to get it right. But obviously, what is actually being sent and where is it being sent is really, really vital. And again, what do you want the end user to do? So we have the ability to do real-time user pop-ups and coaching. That could be a hard block. It could be a step-up auth to re-authenticate. It could be to send that user over to legal to review what they just tried to do. Or it could just be a hard block, right? Or it could be based on their title, allowing them to go through with the transaction and sending the data and file, but ultimately making them write like a justification. Like you have to fill in like 50 characters of why you're doing this, and then allowing it. So there's a lot of things that when we're looking at user traffic is really important, and context and the visibility into the context is key. And it's going to be even more key when we switch into the Gen AI aspect of it. And agentic AI. Again, knowing what's happening, why it's happening is vital to being able to actually enforce it. I mean, there's so many times that, whether you're on the networking team and like when there's a problem, like they always go to the networker, right, to try to fix it when somebody can't access something, even though it's probably not your responsibility. The same thing is true when people get blocked, right? They fill out a support ticket and they're wondering why they can't do something when clearly they're just breaking company policy, right? And they just don't know it, or they don't care. Right? We can really help with that as well.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the coaching piece real quick. A lot of times when we think of education, we think of security awareness education. You might do that annual, check that, just to make sure you're compliant with policies, you understand what a fish looks like and so forth. Where the coaching comes into play is really what Jim talked about, being able to provide real-time contextual help for what you're doing. Because when you think of any type of data leakage, it's not always from someone malicious. A lot of times it's just from someone careless who's trying to do a good job. And, they're just trying to circumvent things, not because they're trying to break policy, but because they have work to do and, they need to get something accomplished. They have a deadline. So being able to provide that coaching to help them know, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. This is a really key piece to layer on top of that security awareness.
Yeah, totally. A lot of players in the SASE space where Netskope is have a slide like this, but I think this is very different than what others have shown. We call it New Edge. It's our private infrastructure network that we've built from the ground up. We're co-located in the same Equinox data centers where the internet exchanges are. We have the most adjacencies out of any cybersecurity company, which is a very powerful statement. It just means our cloud is super connected, right? With other ISVs, with Microsoft, with companies like that to cut down on the security impacting the performance of a user trying to download, move around on the open internet, because we're man in the middling the traffic, so there's going to be an impact, but you can't have the impact equal the user trying to obfuscate your security. Ultimately, each one of them are full compute. And we have some of the best SLAs. I don't have them in here, but best SLAs for decryption as well as threat decryption of new threats like zero-day attacks. We're very proud of this, and if anyone has any questions later, we can certainly go into it in more detail.
Yes, and just to touch on that, a lot of our competitors will rely on the hyperscalers, which adds additional latency, additional hops. So we built this private cloud all from the start for our interconnection strategy that yields into having the best SLAs in the industry.
Yeah. And I think another aspect, just to layer on top of that, when we think of security, especially in the realm of data, we're trying to protect, sensitive data, intellectual property, PII, PHI, whatever it may be. But there's another aspect to data security, and that's operational availability and performance. And that's where having, a purpose-built managed network like NewEdge, we can actually provide both. So if you think of that IT seesaw, we were talking about that earlier. You've got security on one side, you've got performance and usability on the other. We can balance that out. And that's really, I think, a challenge that a lot of security practitioners have.
Yep, I totally agree. Now for the really fun stuff, the Gen AI aspect of it. Every company's kind of on this adoption phase. I mean, I think on one end you have like T1000s, Terminator reference, and on the other side you have the Jetsons, right? Super happy-go-lucky, and everybody's just puttering around. None's the wiser. But that's a big spectrum. And then there's a lot that can go wrong. We're in the forefront of what AI security and what agentic AI is going to build in the future. A lot of companies are just experimenting with it, which is fine, but that's going to lead to shadow IT. Embedded AI in SaaS applications is a big, I would say, can be a friction point or a problem for some companies. A lot of applications are using embedded AI that might actually allow hackers, people, whatever, to obfuscate security without even knowing it. Obviously, the big one is the managed standalone applications that the conversations that we're having today, right? Like a lot of companies are worried about data leakage on that front. The private AI apps is like the new wild west, I think, in a lot of sense. But again, very similar. Like you have to be worried about what you're actually building and the vulnerabilities inside of it before you just unleash and like a bot, right, to be able to move around, especially when we're talking about just not an AI bot, which is a brain, right, but putting it next to and with an MCP protocol, modern context protocol. So and that just basically gives an AI bot like legs, hands, and feet, and now this brain now can move around inside of your environment and start messing around with stuff without you even knowing it. Again, depending on how you build it. Obviously, the last one, which is the autonomous agents aspect of it, which is an aspect where there's going to be probably a lot of over permissioning that takes place in that. Very similar to like a lot of the core concepts, right? When we're talking about like, is it going to be T1000s or is it going to be the Jetsons in the next 5 to 10 years? Things that need to be in place. Obviously, the data protection is huge, right? Protecting what's going in and what's going out. A lot of the same controls that companies are implementing from a user standpoint need to be implemented on the AI side of the house as well, especially when we're talking about agentic or fully autonomous. Same thing with threats, right? You have to be really worried, like if you have a bot that just can go talk to another bot, or a person like me trying to poison the said AI bot, right? So you got to worry about LLMs, prompt injection, model poisoning, as well as the context, right? Like you really need to be able to monitor and red team like what the responses are, or what the prompts are, and what the responses are, all in the same time. If we look at what that looks like, basically, you have you start with the inputs, right? The prompts. You start with like an AI user, an autonomous agent trying to access a public or private cloud. They communicate with each other via like an MCP or an AP2, like an agent-to-agent API. From there, you have the ability, like with processing, that request then goes out. It could be through an embedded AI application where the AI works with a large language model to actually come together with the response, right, and generate information that our user or an AI bot itself is asking for. You have the data source, right, on the LLM side. That knowledge as well as the agent's actions are open and informed by basically the AI data pipeline, which involves data discovery, classification, and labeling, which is why data labeling and classification is going to get even more important in the future. If you're thinking about it from the problems that companies have today with like DLP and like we just don't know what our data is or where it is. It's going to get even worse when you're allowing these autonomous AI bots to go either ping off information or generate new information on your behalf. When we're talking about enforcing the contextual aspects of the protection, you basically need to gain complete visibility, just like you would for any type of user, as well as achieve AI readiness, through understanding where your risks and where areas are that you need to spend a little bit more time, whether that's with really understanding what your AI agent or bot is doing and who and how it's interacting. Because if you, again, look at it from a lack of application access, an agent might, be able to access an application or data just like a user that they shouldn't have. Again, through prompt injection, they can try to get information that they shouldn't see or steal. You also have to have, worry about the LLM models, right, from that application is a big risk as well. Again, through jailbreaking or just a user trying or a bot trying to obfuscate security just like a user would. These are kind of 6 really big use cases that we can cover. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this just given time here, but each one of these is very important. And really, again, it's about maintaining a secure compliance, right? Just like with the user traffic, understanding the identity of the agent itself. Is it an unmanaged AI workload? Understanding what MCP gateway is potentially allowing this AI brain to be able to move around inside of your environment. What environments are they able to move inside of? What other AI agents is said AI agent, in this example in Snowflake, able to interact with? Is this an enterprise instance? Is this a partner's instance? Is this an instance of a company we acquired and we're having these AI bots do all the heavy lifting on the back end? And what's the risk of what that AI agent is actually doing? It's very similar to the risks associated with users themselves. The problem is an AI agent, if it's not configured right, is going to work harder, faster, longer than any one user ever could, right? If they hallucinate, if they try to be malicious, if through prompt injection or hijacking, they turn on the company themselves, it's going to be an area where it's going to cause a lot of friction for companies. All of this wrapped up in and around is all about visibility, right? I don't know if you guys can see all that, but getting visibility into the AI usage is just as important as understanding what your users are doing, if not more, because AI bots and users, especially when enabled with like an MCP gateway, again, an AI bot being able to move around and interact with your data without you knowing it. Understanding is it, in Gemini, is it in ChatGPT? Understanding the, who actually is accessing that, and then what they're doing, uploading, downloading, kind of moving around clockwise, looking at the details of that, right? Probably all of that is fine. I know it looks like there's a ton of uploads into Google Gemini, but there's multiple instances of Gemini, right? With multiple domains that people are logging into. So like, what does that mean? Should that be allowed? Could it be allowed? Could it be that there is a user or a bot sending information into a non-corporate domain or a domain you don't even know? Looking at the trends, DeepSeek is on the bottom there. Understanding, like, for a lot of companies, that's a hard block. But if you have to actually have the visibility to see the full landscape of what people and applications are doing, and understanding that you have an instance of DeepSeek in your environment, or people are pinging DeepSeek, right, with your data, is a huge vulnerability for a company from the conversations that we're having. And the last one is really just looking at the applications themselves in use, right? and the events inside of those applications. Again, just to give you a snapshot, a real easy way to understand what's happening inside of your environment.
And we can't understate the importance of instance, because when we talk about, the proliferation of, different AI sites and tools that are out there, maybe something that Jim is using, is fine for him and his role, but if I'm in the same company, I shouldn't be able to access it. Maybe Patrick should be able to access it, but not have the same, permissions, to upload or to put in certain prompts and so forth within that same tool. And having the understanding of instance as well as identity and behavior, that contextual layer on top of it, that's really going to be key to help sort through like what this whole maze looks like.
And again, context is key. If you stop something from happening before it finishes, sometimes that's really good, right? Like, like a house burning down, like stop it, right? But sometimes you can stop something that should actually happen, right? And again, it just causes friction for any organization, right? So end-to-end visibility, whether it's post-block, right? Visibility post-block of understanding what's happening is going to be critical, especially in this new age and new era when eventually we're just going to have agentic AI building agentic AI, and it's going to outsmart all of us when you plug in a supercomputer.
And Jim, about that
Yeah.
friction and the saying you told me, show me a performance problem, I'll show you a security problem.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's right. If you
Yeah.
have a performance problem, you have a security problem for sure. It's all they're going to obfuscate. So,
Yeah.
and you had a
Yeah, I only have one question. When is Skynet going live?
great question. Next question. Yeah.
That's a little real.
If I had to guess, I would say like we're on.
How do you know it hasn't already?
Yeah, like I think like from an agentic standpoint, like where things could get really scary is probably in the next like 5 to 8 years. Personally, that's my thought, but
We pray it doesn't ever happen.
right,
Yes.
so that's right, that's right. I have a lot of water on hand. Any other questions?
You mentioned behavioral. Are you able to tell if somebody took the guardrails off the AI? Like if it actually, you normally see this particular AI working within these confines and all of a sudden, a hacker's taking the guardrails off. Are you able to detect that?
Yeah, so so there's multiple parts of that, but yeah, so like we can see like if a hacker takes your identity from you, like we can tell like, hey, that's great. I don't know, I don't know, but like, oh hey, like they just all of a sudden are normally in Raleigh and poof, now they're in Russia, right? Like we can like there's aspects of that. We can also understand the behavior of the AI itself. So regardless of who took it off the guardrails, we understand at a macro and micro, like, hey, this bot or this tool that we built, maybe it just uploads things, or maybe it just transfers a file and cuts it into a new format and sends it off, right? To cut out like the middleman aspect. If it starts doing something else other than that, we can tell. Because we understand like the baseline of, or like me, right? They understand the baseline of who I am. They can understand the baseline of an AI bot and then apply policy to it after it gets out of like the scoped parameters. Yeah.
How do you know you're dealing with a bot versus a person?
I don't know.
Just a program. Yeah, when you talk about an AI bot, I mean, those are a little bit different. Are they, as opposed to just a program somebody let loose?
Like from inside of my organization, or like my organization being attacked,
Well,
or like.
scope inside the organization deployed, knowing the difference between an AI bot. and
Yeah, we
something
would do it through like an identity, basically. Like just how I would know, like I'm Jim, that's David, that's Pat. Like you'd give an identity to like your AI tool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever that might be. But yeah. Anything else?
Say cheese. Thank you.
Perfect. We appreciate it. We're here. If you have any more questions that come up, we're all here, and we'd love to chat with you.